Alara Voss walked slowly into the great chamber, her boots clicking softly on the metal floor. The air smelled cold and metallic, and the faint hum of energy fields echoed through the vast hall. She had been here only once before, during the orientation, but back then the room had seemed less intimidating. Now, standing in the center of the council chamber, surrounded by alien commanders from 5 different star systems, it felt enormous. Their forms were strange and imposing, each one unlike the other. Some had tall, spindly frames with glowing eyes, others had thick, armored bodies that looked impossible to move, and 1 or 2 floated a few inches above the floor as if gravity had no hold over them. Alara's own reflection stared back at her from the polished floor, a small, human figure in the middle of giants. "Cadet Voss," one of the commanders said, his voice low and resonant. It sounded like a mix between a growl and a vibration. "We have reviewed your record. Your physical abilities are far below the average for this mission. Your species is known for its resilience, but the odds are against you." Alara's heart did not falter. She had heard this before, over and over, from instructors, peers, even her family on Earth. Humans were unpredictable. They could survive, yes, but they were fragile, especially in comparison to these alien warriors. Every other cadet in the room had enhancements, armor, or natural advantages that Alara lacked. And yet, she stood straight, her chin high, and her hands relaxed to her sides. Another commander, shorter and covered in iridescent scales, leaned forward. "Her chances? 2%, he whispered to the taller one beside him. There was a flicker of disbelief in his compound eyes, and the taller one's antennae twitched, as if in agreement. Alara knew what they were saying. She had known all along what the council thought of her. She felt no fear, only a quiet resolve that steadied her nerves. "Then I'll be that 2%, she said calmly, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. She didn't shout, didn't demand respect. She simply stated it as a fact. The room went silent. No one expected her to respond, and certainly not like this. Most of the alien commanders expected fear, hesitation, or an excuse. Perhaps they thought she would beg to be excused, or collapse under the weight of their judgment. But she had no intention of letting them see weakness. The tallest commander, a being whose body glimmered like liquid metal, regarded her with cold interest. His voice cut through the silence, sharp and precise. Bold words for one who is deemed almost certain to fail. Alara did not flinch. She met his gaze directly. "I do not deny the odds," she said softly but firmly. "But numbers are only part of the story. Humans survive where others cannot because we do not give up. We do not stop trying. We adapt." A ripple ran through the room. The other cadets, mostly alien, exchanged glances. A few whispered to one another, the sound like the rustle of leaves or distant static. It was clear that Alara's words had reached them, even if they did not yet fully understand her. Another commander, whose arms were long enough to wrap around 2 humans, leaned on his staff and studied her with an expression that could have been amusement or curiosity. "Adaptation is not enough when facing the enemy you will confront," he said. "The mission ahead is not a simple test of endurance or cleverness. It is survival against a force that has destroyed entire fleets. Do you truly believe you are capable?" Alara tilted her head slightly. She considered her answer carefully, choosing each word. "I do not claim I will win alone," she said. "But I will try. I will find ways to survive. I will find ways to protect my team. And if I fail, I will fail knowing I gave everything I had." The council murmured again. The metallic commander's eyes narrowed. "Your species seems fragile," he said. "Yet you speak with the certainty of a seasoned warrior." Alara let herself smile slightly. "Humans survive because we think, because we feel, because we refuse to surrender. Fragility is not the same as weakness." The room remained silent for several moments. The council was not used to such honesty. Many species relied on strength, on sheer power, on predictable patterns of survival. Humans were different. They relied on courage, on improvisation, on hope. It was something that was hard to measure in tests or statistics, and yet it was undeniable. A younger alien cadet, hovering near the back, muttered something under her breath. "She really believes it," the cadet said, almost in disbelief. She had been watching humans for years and had never known one to show such composure in the face of near-impossible odds. Alara noticed the eyes on her from every direction. She did not flinch. Instead, she took a deep breath, letting the cool, metallic air fill her lungs. She could feel her heartbeat, steady and strong. She did not need enhancements. She did not need alien strength or claws or energy shields. She only needed her mind, her courage, and her determination. That she knew was enough to start. One of the commanders finally spoke, a being whose body seemed covered in fur but whose voice was like breaking stone. "If you are willing to risk yourself knowing the odds are against you, then you will be observed. The mission will not change. It is as dangerous as we have stated. No consideration will be given for your species' limitations." Alara nodded. "Understood," she said simply. Her eyes scanned the council, then the observation window that showed the mission site, a distant fortress floating above a gas giant, surrounded by swirling storms and armed with deadly weapons. "Then I will go," she added. There was a pause. No one had expected a human cadet to be so steady. Most would have faltered, begged, or argued. But Alara had accepted the danger, and in doing so, she had already begun to win respect. The metallic commander leaned back and regarded her silently. "We shall see if your courage matches your words," he said. "Proceed to the preparation hall. You will begin training immediately." Alara turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed like drumbeats across the chamber. She did not feel fear, only the quiet thrill of a challenge. Around her, alien cadets watched in silence, some with doubt, some with curiosity, and a few with a grudging respect. She paused for a moment before leaving, looking back at the council. "I will not be the 98%, she said softly, almost to herself. "I will be the 2% who survives." The doors closed behind her, and the cold, metallic air of the chamber was replaced with the warm hum of the preparation hall. She could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on her, but she did not mind. She had chosen this path. She had accepted the impossible. And somehow, deep inside, she knew that humans had a way of making the impossible possible. As she began her first exercises, lifting, running, training her mind to think faster than any machine or alien strategy algorithm, she felt a fire inside her chest. It was not anger, nor fear, nor pride. It was something simpler and stronger. It was hope. For the first time, she realized something important. It did not matter what the council thought of her. What mattered was what she knew she could do. And that knowledge, that certainty, gave her power. By the time the sun, or whatever passed for a sun on this world, had dipped below the horizon, Alara was already planning. Alara stepped into the training hall, a massive dome filled with strange machines, glowing floors, and walls that shifted colors like a living creature. The room smelled faintly of ozone and heated metal. Around her, cadets from all over the galaxy were already at work. Some lifted heavy weights that seemed impossible to carry, others moved with speed that made them blur. Max, Clara, and Finn, her assigned alien teammates, were already practicing. Their bodies were larger, stronger, and far faster than hers. Alara felt a tiny spark of doubt, but she pushed it away. She had no illusions about her size or strength. Her advantage would come from something else, something they did not expect. Max, a broad-shouldered alien with 3 arms and dark green skin, looked down at her and snorted. You think you can survive our drills? You'll break before the first obstacle." Clara, smaller than Max but with sharp, spiny armor, grinned. "Or maybe she'll get eaten by the floor panels," she teased. Her voice was light, but there was a sharp edge to it. Finn, tall and thin, with eyes like pools of liquid silver, didn't say much. He merely tilted his head and studied her, curious but skeptical. "She's human," he said finally. "They always surprise you. Usually badly." Alara ignored their comments. She knew laughter and doubts were as common as air here. She did not need their approval. only her own focus. The instructor, a large alien whose body seemed to pulse with energy, called the cadets to attention. "Today," he said in a voice that rumbled like a distant storm, "we will test your agility, speed, and intelligence. Many of you will fail. Only the clever survive." Alara's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was what she had trained for. While other cadets flexed muscles or activated weapons implants, she studied the environment. She noticed that the glowing floor panels would sometimes shift under pressure, that the walls reacted differently to speed, and that some traps relied on sound as much as sight. The first drill began. Cadets had to navigate a room filled with moving obstacles, walls that closed suddenly, panels that emitted sparks, and machines that tried to knock them off balance. Max charged straight ahead, muscles bulging, and collided with a swinging blade. It knocked him backward, but he recovered quickly, growling in frustration. Clara darted forward, faster than Alara expected, and leapt over the first trap with ease. But a small, unexpected panel beneath her foot flipped, sending her sliding dangerously close to the sparks. She barely recovered, landing awkwardly on her side. Alara waited. She did not rush. She observed how the walls moved, how the traps triggered, and how Max and Clara reacted. Then, with precise timing, she stepped forward. Her movements were small, controlled, almost deliberate. She placed her feet lightly on the floor panels, avoiding the ones that looked unstable. She ducked just before a swinging arm came down and rolled under a closing wall. Her hands brushed sparks, but she did not panic. Finn watched her closely, his silver eyes widening. "She's careful," he said softly. "And smart." By the time she reached the end of the room, others were panting, bruised, or out of breath. Max's 3 arms were shaking slightly from effort, Clara's armor was scratched, and even Finn, who had moved elegantly, looked impressed. Alara, small and unscathed, breathed steadily. She had not used speed or strength. She had used observation and planning. The instructor nodded slowly, his pulsing body glowing brighter. "Interesting," he said. "You think ahead. You see patterns that others do not. That is unusual for your species." Alara did not smile. She only nodded politely and prepared for the next drill. The following days were more difficult. Each exercise pushed the cadets to the limit. Some had to fight each other in simulated combat arenas, where their bodies clashed with force and their reflexes were tested. Others had to navigate rooms filled with traps that changed every few seconds, or solve puzzles that required logic under pressure. In every drill, Alara's small size made her appear weak. Max could lift blocks that were heavier than she could imagine. Clara could jump and twist through air obstacles that would have crushed her legs. Finn could dodge attacks with supernatural grace. Yet, in every case, Alara found ways to turn her weakness into advantage. When the combat simulation began, Max charged at her with all 3 arms swinging. Alara sidestepped, ducked, and used his momentum to make him crash into the wall. Clara came from above, striking with spiny blades, but Alara anticipated the timing and caught herself on a ledge, using it to push off and land behind her opponent. Finn tried a flanking maneuver, but she noticed the angle of approach and blocked his path with a simple move, forcing him to rethink. Afterward, the team gathered, sweaty and exhausted. Max's skin was bruised from hitting walls, Clara's spines were slightly bent, and Finn's silver eyes glimmered with curiosity. You think differently," Finn said finally. "Not stronger. Not faster. Different. That's impressive." Alara shrugged lightly. "I have to think differently," she said. "If I try to compete in strength, I'll lose. If I try to compete in speed, I'll lose. I have to find another way." The alien cadets were quiet for a moment. They were not used to someone admitting limits and still winning. Their training was built on the idea that only physical superiority mattered. Yet here was a human, small, fragile by their standards, moving with precision and foresight, surviving obstacles that would have caught most aliens off guard. As the days passed, the dynamic in the training hall began to shift. Other cadets began watching her, trying to understand her method. Some mocked at first, but soon, Curiosity replaced laughter. Max stopped dismissing her outright. Clara studied her movements, trying to learn how she anticipated traps. Finn, the quiet observer, began nodding at her advice during exercises. Even the instructors noticed. Her approach is unusual, one said to another. She does not rely on strength. She relies on calculation, observation, and timing. That is rare. Alara never boasted. She did not need to. Every small success, every obstacle she passed, every drill she completed unscathed, spoke louder than words. And with each day, her confidence grew. She was not just surviving, she was learning, adapting, and getting stronger in ways that were invisible to others. One evening, after a long day of drills, she sat on the floor of the training hall, catching her breath. Max plopped down beside her, surprisingly gentle for his size. "You know," he said, "I didn't think you'd last past the first week. Now, I'm not so sure." Clara leaned against the wall, still panting. "I didn't believe you could even survive the obstacle course," she admitted. "But you're different. You think 10 steps ahead. You see things we don't." Finn, still standing, looked at her with those deep silver eyes. "Humans strange," he said softly. "But clever. Very clever." Alara smiled faintly. "I have to be," she said. "The mission ahead won't wait for me to be strong. I have to survive by thinking, by noticing, by being ready for anything. That's all I have. And it's enough." The aliens were silent for a moment, absorbing her words. No one else had ever said that in such a simple, calm way. It was not arrogance, not defiance, it was truth. And truth, she realized, had its own strength. The day of the mission arrived. Alara stood at the edge of the landing platform, her heart beating steadily, her hands gripping the straps of her pack. The fortress floated in the blackness above the gas giant, its walls glowing faintly with shifting patterns of light, almost alive. The air hummed with energy, and the force fields around the fortress shimmered in colors she had never seen before. It was beautiful, terrifying, and deadly all at once. Max, Clara, and Finn lined up beside her. Max flexed his 3 arms, checking the small energy weapons strapped to his forearms. Clara adjusted her spines, making them twitch with anticipation. Finn's silver eyes scanned the horizon, analyzing every detail. They were ready, or as ready as anyone could be. "Stay close," Alara said quietly, though not as a warning. It was more a reminder to herself. "Watch patterns. Move carefully. Don't panic." Max smirked. "Careful? That's a human word. We crush obstacles. That's how we survive." Alara shook her head. "Crushing is fine if you're strong enough. I'm not. I need another way." The group dropped from the platform and landed softly on the outer wall of the fortress. The glow of the shifting floor beneath them made it hard to see where it was safe to step. Alara's eyes scanned quickly. She noticed that some sections of the glowing path flickered just before activating a trap. She pointed it out quietly to Max. "Step there first, then jump left when it flashes," she whispered. Max followed, surprised when the trap activated harmlessly under their coordinated movement. "How did you?" he began, but Alara had already moved on, leading the way toward a narrow passage. The inside of the fortress was a maze of corridors, walls that shifted without warning, and floors that seemed to bend slightly under weight. Lights pulsed in a rhythmic pattern, but it was irregular enough to keep anyone from trusting them. Some corridors seemed dead ends until the walls slid open, revealing hidden doors. Others were covered with panels that would shoot sparks if triggered incorrectly. Clara hesitated at one of the corridors, scanning the walls. "There's a trap somewhere here," she said. "I can feel it in the panels." Alara stepped forward calmly, placing one hand on the wall, feeling for vibrations, and bending slightly to glance at the floor. She noticed faint scratches on the panels, probably marks from previous missions or automated testing. She traced the path with her fingers and whispered, "Step here, here, and then jump to that platform. The panel near the right wall is pressure sensitive. Avoid it." The team followed, impressed when the trap activated but harmlessly under her guidance. Finn raised an eyebrow. You notice the smallest things. Humans really do see differently. Alara only nodded and kept moving. The deeper they went, the more dangerous the fortress became. Some rooms had mechanical arms that swung without warning, others had floors that tilted suddenly to push intruders into pits. Lasers crisscrossed in patterns designed to hit anyone too fast or careless. At one point, Finn stepped forward too quickly and triggered a hidden trap. A net shot out from the wall, closing around him before he could react. Alara's mind worked instantly. She grabbed a nearby metal rod, bent it carefully, and used it to hook the net and pull it off the floor before it could tighten. She then shoved Finn out of the way just as the trap reset. Thanks, Finn gasped, wide-eyed. That was fast. How did you see that coming? Alara shrugged. Patterns repeat. All traps have patterns. You just have to notice them. Max grunted, clearly impressed but unwilling to admit it. You're unpredictable. I don't like it, but it works. The team continued, following Alara through a maze of shifting walls and glowing floors. At every corner, she paused, observing, listening, feeling for the faint hums that indicated pressure plates or hidden triggers. Clara began mimicking her small movements, stepping lightly and scanning like Alara had taught. Even Max started paying attention to the smallest visual cues instead of relying only on strength. Eventually, they entered a larger chamber, one filled with spinning blades and high-energy traps. The corridor narrowed suddenly, forcing them to move in a single line. Alara moved first, her eyes scanning for the quickest path. A spinning blade swung toward her, its motion too fast for the others to react in time. She ducked, then rolled, letting the blade pass over her back. A panel in the floor suddenly lit up red, signaling another trap. Max froze. What now? He asked. Alara's eyes flicked to a nearby wall. A small beam of light reflected off it, just at the right angle. She grabbed a loose panel and positioned it to deflect the trap's energy harmlessly to the side. The panel glowed, then fizzled out, and the rest of the path became safe. Clara let out a quiet whistle. I've never seen anyone do that before, she said. Finn nodded. It's not just luck. She calculates, anticipates, and acts faster than we do. That's human. The team moved further into the fortress, the obstacles becoming more complex. Alara noticed that some traps were designed to exploit fear. Panels would flicker as if dangerous, then retract, luring cadets into false safety. Other walls would close suddenly, forcing retreat or panic. Humans might be considered weak, but Alara's calm mind allowed her to ignore the fear and focus on the mechanics. At one point, Max and Clara got separated when a wall slid down unexpectedly. Finn froze, unsure which way to go. Alara did not hesitate. She ran to a junction, analyzed the moving walls, and led Finn around to rescue the others. Her timing was perfect, and the team rejoined without injury. By the time they reached a central chamber, the alien cadets were beginning to understand something remarkable. Alara, small and human, had moved through deadly corridors that many of them had hesitated at. She had guided them, saved them, and anticipated traps that no one else noticed. Max finally admitted aloud, I don't like it, but you're good. Really good. Clara laughed softly. Unpredictable, yes. But clever. That's a human for you, I suppose. Finn simply stared, silver eyes wide, and said nothing, as if trying to process what he had witnessed. Alara paused for a moment, breathing steadily. She felt the weight of their eyes on her, but she ignored it. Her focus was on the next challenge. The fortress was alive with danger, and one mistake could mean the end. She knew that every step, every decision, every observation mattered. A faint alarm echoed in the distance. The fortress seemed to sense intruders, and new traps activated with more speed and precision. The spinning walls moved faster, energy beams crossed more rapidly, and the floor began to tilt unexpectedly. Alara studied the patterns calmly, noting each pulse and flicker. She led the team through a particularly tricky passage where the floor moved in sections, some rising while others sank. Finn nearly slipped, but she caught his arm, steadying him. Max and Clara followed carefully, trusting her judgment more with every passing moment. Finally, they reached a wide room with walls that rotated slowly, lined with sharp spikes. The corridor behind them had sealed off, and there was no turning back. The only way forward was through the chamber. Alara took a deep breath. "Watch me," she said. "Step exactly where I step. Don't rush. Timing matters." The corridor ended in a wide chamber, lit by harsh red lights that bounced off the walls in jagged patterns. Alara stopped at the entrance, her eyes scanning the room carefully. Her heart was steady, but adrenaline hummed beneath her skin. The fortress had grown darker, more dangerous, the further they went. Before them, elite guards moved with precision, their armor gleaming like black mirrors. Their weapons pulsed with energy, far faster and more powerful than anything Max, Clara, Finn, or even Alara had faced before. The group froze behind a low wall, trying to remain unseen. Max whispered, "We can't fight them. They'll tear us apart." Clara's claws flexed, ready to strike. "We have to try something, but what?" Alara crouched, keeping her voice low. "We don't fight straight on. That's suicide. We move carefully, use shadows, distractions, anything to split them up. I've been studying their patterns since we entered this fortress. They rotate patrols, but they follow predictable intervals." Finn's silver eyes widened. "You want to outsmart them? That's risky." Alara nodded. "Yes, but it's the only way." She gestured to a small passage on the left. "We'll use that corridor to flank them. Shadows there are deep. Max, you take the right side. Clara, you and I will draw attention here. Finn, stay back and watch the main exit. When I signal, move." Max grunted, but he trusted her. Clara gave a small nod, and Finn's head tilted slightly, the closest he would get to agreeing without words. The group moved forward carefully. Alara led, keeping close to the walls, stepping silently across floor panels that would have triggered alarms for anyone else. She noticed subtle patterns, the faint hum of energy, the reflection of red light on a polished floor, the slight delay in the guard's steps. When they reached the chamber entrance, she signaled to Clara. Clara shifted slightly, letting the shadows catch her movement. A guard noticed immediately, swinging his energy blade. Alara ducked, moving behind a column, while another guard turned toward the noise. Max slipped along the right corridor, letting loose a small device that emitted a high-pitched noise. A group of guards pivoted toward the sound, leaving gaps in their formation. Alara whispered to the team, "Now. Move quickly, stay hidden, follow my lead." The human cadet moved first, weaving through shadows and gaps. Clara followed, Max flanked, and Finn watched the retreating patterns, ready to signal any misstep. Suddenly, one of the guards turned sharply, spotting Alara. Energy beams fired in a rapid burst. Alara rolled behind a crate just in time, sparks hitting the wall where her head had been moments before. She pressed her back against the metal, calm but alert. "Step lightly," she whispered to Clara. "Draw them again, but don't get caught." Clara nodded, leaning forward, making small movements to bait another guard away from the group. Two guards took the bait, chasing her into the shadows. Alara motioned Max to follow her plan. He triggered a small flare from his wrist device, reflecting the light off a metal column and creating the illusion of movement on the opposite side. The remaining guards moved toward the flare, splitting their numbers further. Alara whispered, "Perfect. Keep moving. Use the gaps." They pressed forward, ducking under energy beams, sliding past walls that rotated suddenly, and stepping only where the floor was safe. She calculated each move in seconds, every flicker of light, every hum, every shadow. By the time they reached the other side of the chamber, the elite guards were divided, confused, and slightly disoriented. Max exhaled. "I can't believe that worked." Clara grinned. "It did because of her. Humans are clever." Finn's silver eyes shone. I underestimated her. She sees things we don't. Timing, patterns, distraction. Amazing." Alara didn't smile. She knew the mission was far from over. The fortress was full of danger, and this was only one chamber. But her plan had worked. Where brute force would have failed, strategy had succeeded. She had turned what should have been certain death into a manageable challenge. As they moved into a smaller hallway, Alara noticed another detail. The walls were lined with small vents. They pulsed faintly with air and light, which meant there could be hidden sensors. She tapped Max lightly. "Watch your step. These vents trigger motion sensors if we touch them. Step lightly and follow me exactly." Max followed, grumbling under his breath but obeying. Clara and Finn mirrored each step. The humans' careful observation kept them safe. Then the next challenge appeared, a group of 3 guards patrolling a narrow passage ahead. Their weapons glowed dangerously, and their movements were fast, almost synchronized. Alara crouched behind a corner and studied them. Their pattern was simple but strict. They moved in a triangle, with pauses after each rotation. She whispered, "We'll use shadows and speed. Max, create a distraction. Clara and I will slip past. Finn, be ready to cover the exit." Max launched a small device that emitted a pulse, making a wall vibrate loudly. The guard's heads snapped toward the noise. Alara and Clara slid forward in the shadows, moving along the edges where the light didn't reach. Finn's presence at the exit gave them an extra sense of safety. One guard noticed a movement, a small flicker, but before he could raise the alarm, Alara threw a small reflector, bouncing the red light in his eyes. He stumbled back, confused, giving them just enough time to slip past. The team regrouped in a larger chamber, hearts racing, breathing slightly heavy. Alara took a moment to steady herself, but she noticed Max, Clara, and Finn were looking at her differently now. The doubt, the mockery, the hesitation, they were gone. Max said quietly, "You're something else, human. I can't believe I doubted you." Clara smiled, showing her spines twitching in amusement. "We all underestimated her. Humans clever in ways we don't expect." Finn just nodded slowly, still analyzing her movements. "She makes the impossible possible," he said finally. Alara shook her head. "It's not impossible. It's about seeing what others don't, predicting patterns, and staying calm. We only survive if we stay smart, not just strong." Their path continued, deeper into the fortress. Red light shifted, panels moved, and the traps grew more sophisticated. But Alara stayed ahead, noticing the smallest details, a flicker of light, a shift in a floor panel, the subtle vibration of a wall. She guided her team carefully, always staying one step ahead of the enemy. By the time they reached a large observation chamber, the team was exhausted but safe. Elite guards patrolled behind them, unaware of how narrowly they had been outsmarted. Alara looked at her teammates. "We survived this because we worked together and because we used our minds. That's our advantage. Don't forget it." Max rubbed his arm. You actually planned all of this in your head? All while moving?" Alara nodded. "Yes. Every step, every pause, every trick. Watch, listen, and think. That's all it takes." Clara let out a quiet laugh. "I didn't believe humans could do this. But you're incredible." Finn's silver eyes met hers. "I think I understand now. Humans are not weak. They are unpredictable. And that unpredictability can be deadly." Alara crept into the inner chamber of the fortress, the air thick with energy and the smell of ozone. The room was enormous, with walls that glowed faintly in patterns that seemed to shift with every step. The floor was smooth metal, reflecting the red and blue lights that flickered above. Her pack felt heavier than usual, but she ignored it. Every breath was controlled, every step deliberate. This was it, the final challenge. The alien commander, the one everyone had warned her about, waited inside. Alone, she would have to face him. Max, Clara, and Finn had gone ahead to secure other objectives. They trusted her, and she trusted them to hold the flanks. She had trained for this moment, but training and reality were never the same. She knew one mistake here could mean the end. She steadied herself, taking a moment to visualize the commander's possible movements. He was known for his strength, speed, and ruthlessness. Every move he made had precision, and he expected others to be predictable. That was her advantage. The chamber's entrance slid shut behind her, sealing her in. She felt the vibration in the floor, the faint hum of energy around the walls. And then she saw him. The commander was taller than any alien she had faced, with sleek black armor that glimmered like polished obsidian. His eyes glowed faint red, scanning the room instantly. A weapon hung at his side, pulsing with lethal energy. He moved with a quiet confidence, every motion deliberate. "You made it this far, human," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "Impressive. But I am not easily defeated." Alara did not respond with words. Instead, she studied him carefully. The way he shifted his weight, the way his weapon glowed slightly before each strike, the rhythm of his steps. He assumed she would act like the others, rush forward, attack, or panic. That assumption would be her advantage. She took a small step forward, and he mirrored her, weapon raised. Sparks flickered along the floor as he shifted, testing her. Alara moved lightly, staying low, watching, listening, feeling the vibrations in the metal beneath her boots. He lunged first, fast, powerful, aiming directly at her torso. She rolled to the side, barely avoiding the energy strike. The beam hit the wall with a sharp sizzle, leaving a burn mark in the metal. Her heart raced, but she remained calm. She noted the commander's movement. Every attack had a pattern, a rhythm, and a slight delay between strikes. She ducked under another swing and kicked a small control panel beside her. Sparks flew, and a low wall rose, blocking his next attack. The commander stepped back, momentarily surprised. Alara used the moment to close the distance, but carefully, avoiding a direct clash. She knew brute force would fail. She needed cleverness. He attacked again, swinging his weapon in a wide arc. Alara rolled forward, using his momentum against him. He stumbled slightly but recovered instantly, eyes narrowing. He did not expect her to anticipate his moves, to use his own power to her advantage. Alara moved behind a pillar, studying him. She noticed a faint delay in his left arm, a subtle sign that he always favored one side when striking rapidly. She also saw that the floor had raised panels near the wall, perfect for misdirection. She whispered to herself, "Watch, wait, and act." The commander lunged again, aiming to catch her off guard. Alara sidestepped at the last moment, sliding across a raised panel and knocking a loose rod from the floor. The rod clattered, echoing loudly, and the commander's eyes flicked toward the noise. He moved instinctively, leaving an opening she could use. Alara feinted left, pretending to slip on a panel. The commander lunged forward aggressively, thinking she was vulnerable. Instead, she rolled to the right, grabbed a small energy conduit from the wall, and swung it like a baton, striking the weapon from his hand. The commander stumbled back, blinking in surprise. The room was silent for a moment, except for the faint hum of the fortress. The commander's weapon lay on the floor, crackling with unstable energy. Alara stood poised, breathing steadily, her eyes locked on him. You used to faint," he said slowly, recovering his balance. "Clever, but I am not defeated yet." Alara did not respond. She moved cautiously, keeping the pillar between them. She noticed another detail. The ceiling lights flickered in a pattern. If she timed her movements with the lights, she could stay in shadow, making it harder for him to predict her next step. The commander attacked again, faster this time. Alara dodged, using the pillars and shadows to her advantage. She moved unpredictably, sometimes rolling, sometimes ducking, sometimes leaping lightly over small gaps. Each move forced him to adjust, slow down, or overreach. Minutes felt like hours. Sweat ran down her back, but her focus never wavered. She noticed that every time he overextended, there was a momentary gap, a fraction of a second where she could act. Humans might not have raw strength, but their speed of thought and ability to improvise were unmatched in situations like this. She fainted again, this time dropping to the floor as if she had tripped. The commander lunged with confidence, certain she was vulnerable. At the last possible moment, she rolled to the side and kicked a small control panel, causing a short circuit that sent sparks flying across the floor. The light reflected in his eyes, making it impossible for him to aim precisely. Alara sprang forward, grabbed a loose section of his weapon, and twisted it sharply. Sparks shot out, the weapon discharging harmlessly against the floor. The commander stumbled unbalanced, his glowing eyes wide. Finally, with one careful, calculated move, she used his momentum against him, spinning around and pressing him back against the wall. He struggled, but she had anticipated every twist and turn. One final push, and the weapon clattered across the room, landing out of reach. Alara stepped back, breathing heavily, but steady. The commander looked at her, shocked, his chest rising and falling rapidly. "Impossible," he whispered. "How?" She said quietly, almost to herself. "I don't need strength. I just need to think." In the control room above, the other alien commanders watched the scene unfold on their screens. Their eyes widened. Sparks flew in the chamber, and the image showed the humans standing over the defeated commander. No one had expected it. No one had imagined a small human could disarm their elite warrior using nothing but wits, timing, and observation. One of the commanders gasped. She beat him. With brains, not brute force. Another whispered, "Human ingenuity, it's terrifying." Back in the chamber, Alara didn't celebrate. She only stayed alert, scanning for any remaining threats. The commander, defeated but alive, looked up at her with a mixture of respect and disbelief. "You are not what I expected," he said finally. Alara nodded slightly. "And you should never underestimate humans," she said calmly. "We survive because we adapt, because we think, because we don't stop." The commander blinked, then stepped back, lowering his head in silent acknowledgement. Alara knew this moment would be remembered by them, not as a lucky victory, but as proof that humans were dangerous in ways brute force could never measure. She turned toward the exit, her body tense but ready. The fortress was still filled with danger, but the most critical threat, the commander, had been neutralized. She had faced the impossible alone, and her mind had won where power had failed. Alara's boots hit the landing platform of the academy with a soft thud. The smell of metal and ozone greeted her, familiar and grounding after the chaos of the fortress. Her body ached from every muscle to the tips of her fingers, bruises marred her arms and legs, and a thin trickle of blood ran down the side of her forehead. Sweat clung to her hair, and her uniform was torn in several places. She looked small, fragile even, but her eyes shone with quiet determination. Behind her, Max, Clara, and Finn followed, carrying what remained of their equipment, tired but alive. The mission had pushed them to the edge, but they had made it. And they had survived because Alara had led them, guided them, and thought faster than anyone could imagine. The academy doors slid open automatically, and the hall beyond was filled with cadets, instructors, and the council members. A soft hum of conversation rippled through the room as everyone turned to look at the small human who had returned from what seemed impossible. Max muttered under his breath, "I still can't believe she did it. A human, leading us through that fortress alone. She's unbelievable." Clara nodded slowly, flexing her claws in quiet thought. "I didn't think humans could do more than survive. I was wrong. She survives, yes, but she leads. She wins where others would fail." Finn's silver eyes followed Alara as she moved forward. "I underestimated her. Completely. And that it will teach me to never do that again." Alara's steps were steady, even though her body screamed in protest. She had learned something important in the fortress. Strength alone did not guarantee survival. Observation, strategy, and courage mattered just as much, if not more. She had proven that humans could succeed where brute force failed, and she hoped her return would leave a mark. The council chamber opened before her, and she stepped inside. A hush fell over the room. The alien members of the council were seated in their high chairs, bodies pulsing, floating, or armored, but their attention was fixed on her. Some looked skeptical, some curious, and some openly impressed. "You return," the metallic council leader said. His voice vibrated through the hall. "And you are intact. Explain yourself, human. How did you succeed where others would fail?" Alara straightened her back and spoke calmly. "I studied the patterns, noticed the traps, and led my team using what I had: observation, strategy, and timing. Strength alone would not have worked. Brute force would have failed. But careful thought and action, that saved us." There was silence. Some of the council members exchanged looks, nodding slowly. Others whispered among themselves. The idea that a human, small and fragile by their standards, could outthink the most deadly forces in the fortress was both surprising and troubling. The metallic leader leaned forward. "So, your species, long thought weak in combat, relies on intellect and courage to survive." Alara nodded. "Yes. That is our strength. We adapt. We think. We act when others hesitate. We survive against impossible odds, not by being the strongest, but by being clever and persistent." A ripple of murmurs ran through the assembly. Some cadets looked stunned. Others, especially alien cadets who had trained alongside her, began to realize how underestimated humans had been. Max stepped forward slightly.
"She's right," he said.
"I saw it myself. She led us through traps, drew off elite guards, and faced the commander alone. If it weren't for her planning, we'd all be dead. Not luck. Strategy. Cleverness. Human ingenuity." Clara added, her claws flexing in thought. "I thought she was weak. I doubted her. But now, I see humans differently. They're unpredictable, and that makes them dangerous in ways we didn't expect." Finn nodded slowly, his silver eyes glinting with understanding. Humans survive because they think, and because they refuse to surrender. That is strength, too. The council leader's glowing eyes shifted toward Alara. 2%, he murmured. "They gave her 2% and she gave us hope. She has proven what we never imagined. The weakest by appearance may be the strongest by mind." Alara bowed her head slightly, acknowledging their words, but keeping her composure. She knew that recognition was not the reason she had survived. Survival had required focus, observation, and courage, not applause. But the acknowledgement was gratifying. It was proof that humans could stand beside or even lead other species under impossible circumstances. The other cadets began to approach, cautiously at first, then with admiration. Some asked how she had navigated traps. Others wanted to know how she had disarmed the commander. Alara explained patiently, showing the same calm thought she had used throughout the fortress. She emphasized observation, planning, and trust in her team. Each cadet listened carefully, many scribbling notes or mentally marking her techniques to try themselves. A younger cadet, a green-skinned alien with 4 eyes, approached shyly. I didn't believe humans could do this," the cadet admitted. "You make it seem natural, effortless."
"How?"
Alara smiled faintly. "It's not natural, not effortless. It's focus, preparation, and courage. If you refuse to give up, even when the odds are against you, you find a way. That's what humans do. That's what anyone can do if they choose to think and act." By the end of the day, the story of her mission had spread throughout the academy. Everywhere she went, cadets paused to look, whispers followed her, and a quiet respect filled the hallways. Max, Clara, and Finn walked with her side by side, no longer peers in doubt, but teammates who had learned to trust her completely. Max nudged her lightly. "You didn't just survive," he said. "You led. You taught us something we'll never forget." Clara's spines twitched slightly in amusement and admiration. "I thought humans were fragile. I was wrong. You make us all rethink what we thought we knew." Finn nodded quietly. "We all underestimated you. Not anymore. You've shown that thinking, observation, and courage can match or exceed any strength." Alara looked at her teammates and felt a warmth inside. It was not pride, not in the boastful sense, but satisfaction. She had faced impossible odds, and not only had she survived, but she had led, guided, and inspired. That was something even brute strength could not achieve. The metallic council leader addressed her one last time. Cadet Ilera Voss, you have changed the way we see humans. Where we expected weakness, you have shown ingenuity. Where we expected fear, you have shown courage. You have reminded us all that intelligence, strategy, and willpower are as powerful as any weapon. Ilera bowed slightly. I only did what I had to do. I did not survive alone. Max, Clara, Finn, they were with me. We all survived because we worked together. The leader's eyes glowed faintly, a sign of acknowledgement and respect. Then we recognize your achievement and the lesson you have taught us all. Humanity is not what we assumed. Humanity is something more. That evening, as Ilera walked through the quiet corridors of the academy, she noticed cadets stopping to nod, instructors glancing with respect, and even aliens she had never met giving her small gestures of approval. She felt tired, battered, and sore, but she felt alive and triumphant in a way that had nothing to do with combat. She knew that her small size, her apparent fragility, had never mattered. What mattered was the mind, the will, and the courage to act when others hesitated.